Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. And the views of the guests may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast because everyone, no matter where you live, needs to have this book. And why? Why do I talk about on this show about death, dying, pre-planning, planning your end of life? Is it because I'm a morbid person? No. It's because I want you, the audience, to be prepared. You need to be prepared for the end of life. You need to start planning. What do you want your end of life to look like? What do you want as far as your funeral service, memorial service? Where do you want to be buried, or do you want to be cremated? These are things to think about beforehand, folks, not when you're in the throes of mourning and grief. And I know that from firsthand experience. And I have with me today someone you're going to want to hear who is experienced in this field. And my guest is Andrea Cox, who is a licensed pre-planning consultant. She is author of Final Departure, a step-by-step guide to prepare for one's passing, which already has 5-star reviews. It's a phenomenal book. Andrea is founder of www.preplanfirst.com, also known as Cox Compassionate Planning Concierge Ltd. And I want to welcome Andrea Cox to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Andrea, your book is so spot on, is so desperately needed. I think everyone, no matter where you are in this world, needs to have this book. And so I want to thank you for writing this book and for helping people with this touchy, sensitive subject that it needs to be addressed. And I'd like to ask you, how did you get motivated to start your business? First, I'll ask you that, and about writing your book.
Wow, such good question. So the business actually came about while I was writing the book. So a little background, I'm a licensed pre-planning consultant, and I actually sell prepaid funeral packages. But while doing that, my passion has been educating people on the importance of, having these uncomfortable conversations with our loved ones and putting a plan in place before there's a crisis or before someone passes away. So I do these through webinars. I do them through seminars. I do a Let's Talk on Instagram and on Facebook, just to try to, educate people on this topic that we don't want to talk about. And how the book came about is because there's that saying that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And although I'd be doing these seminars and these webinars and people would be coming out, but to action what we've learned is another thing. Life happens. We go to these events. We learn so much. We have a plan to put something in place. We have a plan to call the lawyers to, get our wills done and our living wills done and to have these conversations. But life happens and it doesn't happen, right? And this is where the book came about. And through writing the book and through that, then that's where the business came about, because there's been services that I have been doing within the community that is definitely needed. So it incorporated my experience with the Pre-Plan First company. So that's pretty much how that came about. So, working with families for years, with those who have lost loved ones. And, as we know, when someone passes away, there's so much chaos, there's so much confusion, there's family breakdowns, there's financial hardship. And the list kind of goes on in regards to our families not having a good death experience. Hence why when we put a plan in place, have these uncomfortable conversations, let our families know what our final wishes are, let our families know where to find things. During that devastating time, it'll be so much. It's not easy, but it's easier, if that makes any sense. The more that we know in advance.
Oh, definitely. I so agree with that. It's so important. You hear so many times, oh, I'm going to do that, or, oh, no, I can't do that. And it's like a gift, giving a gift to your family. I know it's difficult to do. When my husband, who had early onset Alzheimer's, I knew his time was getting near, and I had that intuition. And I went down to the cemetery, and I did the payments for the opening and closing of the graves. And I also started to plan his funeral and went down to plan it and prepay it. I do have to say this, Andrea, and I'm sure other people probably felt the same way that I did. I don't know why. I knew it was necessary. I knew I had to do it. I didn't tell Matt I was doing it. I felt a sense of guilt doing it. I was doing something behind his back. And I did do a couple of checks, and I couldn't do it. And I said, well, I'll just come out of his life insurance. Now, with my own funeral that I'm pre-planning, I have no problem writing a check out for my own funeral. That sounds weird. But I want to tell the audience, there's no reason to feel guilty. There's no reason. You're not doing anything wrong by pre-planning your loved one's funeral if they have a terminal illness and you know it, or doing your own. Even if you're healthy right now, you should be planning. Right. And I just had to say that, because a lot of people might feel, oh, I can't do that. I feel guilty. I'm wishing their death. And that's not true. That's superstition, and it's not true. You must plan. What is the first step in planning, Andrea? What would you recommend?
Well, you know what? It's interesting, because I think that first of all, I think it's for us to realize and unfortunately accept that, you know what? Unfortunately, 100%, like the stat has it, the 1 out of 1 of us, we're going to pass away, right? So it's not an if, it's a matter of when. And I think what will even make it easier for us is when we think about what legacy do we want to leave behind, right? Because they say that our legacy is the ultimate person we want to become. And which means that we need to start that today, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, right? So, you know, and of course in the book there's so much information. There's a chapter on legacy, ideas as to how you want to leave, what legacy do you want to leave behind, so we could start doing that from today. And so that's the biggest thing, is just understanding that it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And what experience do we want our families to have? And it's not even so much as what we want, is we need to even understand what our family members have. Because if our family members do not have something in place, then that falls on those who are left behind, right? So this is why having those uncomfortable conversations. So, and it even starts with even senior care, right? Because, for some of us, it's not like we're going to die right away. We're going to get, we're going to age. We're going to be more and more mature. It's so funny because with my mom, I couldn't say that, she's getting old. She didn't like that. And now that she's mid-70s, like, she's totally okay with, saying that she's getting old. But, I would always have to say to make her feel comfortable that she's maturing, right? So, So it's more on, okay, when we think about senior care, if we come to that point that we can't stay home on our own, are we going to live in with our children? Are we going to go into a care facility? Are we going to, It's just having, having those conversations, because what ends up happening, once again, is that if you don't have those conversations early in advance, it's going to be in a crisis mode. And when it's in a crisis mode, that's when we don't want to, that's when we're almost more stubborn, right? And I know even up to last week, there's been so many different situations with seniors in my community that it's now crisis mode, and it's harder to work with our seniors when it's crisis mode because they didn't understand things from before, and they're holding their guns now that they don't want to do certain things, or they don't want to leave their house, or they don't want support coming in, and the list kind of goes on. So having those conversations from the very beginning, and the conversations would be, senior care options. It would be DNR, whether you want to be resuscitated or not. Even when it comes to organ donation, lots of information with organ donation that a lot of us do not understand. And I don't want to go into too much detail with it just because we don't have, there's so much into this, but, this is why it's so important to get the book, because there's a lot of information in that book as a resource to help our families. When it comes to, what is your final disposition? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? And even when it comes to cremation, there's 3 options for that. So just telling our family that we want to be cremated. There's a direct cremation, which is where you go into the care of the funeral home and they cremate you right away. And there's no service, so there's nothing. And then there's going to be the cremation with a memorial service, right, where whether you have it at a church, you have it at the funeral home, or you might do it at your home, but, there'll be the urn that's there. Or there is a traditional funeral where there's a casket, there's a viewing, and then there is cremation after, right? So, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered when we go to the funeral home. Hence, why it's so important that we try to get as much information in advance, so we're not making decisions in our emotional state. Right? Because we also need to keep in mind that whatever decisions we make during that time, it's permanent, right? So that's why it's so important to understand what does that look like. And even where to find those important documents. Well, you know what? Let your children know, if something happens to me tomorrow morning and I don't wake up, go underneath the bed, go in the suitcase. You're going to find, my the funeral home information. You're going to have all that, information there. And this is where this book comes in very handy, is that as you're reading through the book, it refers you to a workbook at the back. So it's a guide. It's information. It's a resource for us to more understand all what comes with unfortunate death. But it's going to be a guide for our children and our loved ones when they need us the most. Because it has even what to do the first 24 hours. So I have a step-by-step guide what to do. And then when we fill out the workbook, all the questions, or most of the questions that even the funeral home will be asking them, it's in the book. So, and that's the nice thing, is that we get this stuff done, peace of mind, and we live the best life. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And just, have your bucket list. There's a chapter on having a bucket list, writing down what do you want to do. And just do it and live life to the fullest, right? So, it doesn't have to be morbid. I know when it comes to death, it doesn't have to be morbid. But, instead of I like to say, and we're probably going to notice, more people are noticing, it's a celebration of life, right? So that it's a celebration of our loved ones' life when they are gone. So, yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, you're going to miss them. There's so much that we need to celebrate them, right? Because, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate births, we celebrate anniversaries, weddings, the list kind of goes on. But when one passes away, it's like we want to kind of push it underneath the rug. We just want to ignore it when, that's when we need to embrace it and do different things to remember our loved ones. Even in our conversation, I just think it's just so beautiful how with yours and your husband. What's your husband's name again?
Matthew.
Matt.
Yeah,
with your journey, right? Because of your journey, you're able to keep his legacy going by having these conversations and educating people on such an important topic, right? So I just think it's just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that's what it starts with. I think it's just one accepting that it's unfortunately going to happen, and let's put a plan in place today for peace of mind tomorrow for our loved ones.
Oh, what you said, Andrea, is so true. People don't want to talk about this. I know with my own family, my mom, God bless her, I had brought up like a few years ago, where do you want to go when you can no longer live in your house? And she was very adamant, I am not going anywhere. I'm staying in my house. And then, people tend to, a crisis mode happens. But what happened was my brother died, who lived with my mom. My mom was alone, and for the first time in her life, and she was starting to have a fall. And, my younger brother suggested, go into assisted living last year. She wasn't ready. And this year she went. She went to assisted living. She wished she was still at home, but she likes the place that she's at. So sometimes it takes a little, like, nudging, to get them, because, it's difficult to give up your house, your independence.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to start planning these things. And I have a support group, and I tell people this, and I have shows about this. I can't even impress it enough upon the audience, and I don't care if I sound redundant. We plan everything in our life. We plan, a college, who we have an idea who we want to marry, when we want to have a baby, a house. But why is it that we have such a hard time planning our end of life, which is going to happen, whether we want to discuss it or not? There's a country song, "No one gets out of this world alive," something to that effect, which is so true. We are all going to die, so why not plan how it looks like? Matt's hospice doctor, he said to me, at the age of 65, he starts telling people about the end of life and planning for it. And I'm thinking, why wait until you're 65? And I told him that, I have shows, that talk about this. He said, please keep having those shows because it makes my job easier, because people don't have a clue. Well, here's a book. Here's Andrea's book. And you will have clues. And I have to tell you about the cover. I love the cover of your book because you have a little suitcase and you have little different things on there, organ donation, and you're from Canada. And I just like the concept of going on a trip on your cover. How did you come up with that, to have the suitcase on your cover?
Well, when it comes to this subject, there's so much involved in it, and we don't really understand it until we are forced to when someone has passed away. So it was the whole thing on, I wanted something that people can see the lift come on, and I was speaking with one of the gentlemen in my BNI. I'm in a part of a networking group, and that's when he mentioned that, oh my goodness, why don't you remember how they used to put these stickers on the suitcases? I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So that's pretty much how that. So like the stickers that's on the suitcase is will. So the importance of us packing, having our wills done, doing research when it comes to the funeral home and cemetery. There's grief involved with that, and that's another thing is that if there's no, depending on what our death experience is, it affects our grief journey. Right? So, of course, once again, there's a part inside the book that talks about grief. Then it talks about insurance. Insurance is such another discussion that people don't like to talk about it because we don't understand how insurance works. So there's a chapter there on breaking down what the various insurance products are, but the importance of talking to 2 to 3 insurance agents in your area to get as much information before signing on the dotted line. And I just want to, there's so much I want to go deeper into, but I won't. But, and then it talks about what your final wishes are, organ donation, and what your legacy is. So that's the stickers that are on the suitcase at the front of the book. And then there is the spotlight that is on the suitcase. And that came about, at first when I was doing the book, I was trying to get people's opinions as to what color should the cover of the book be. And then it was white. And then it was black. But black was just it looked beautiful on the black. But because this topic was so heavy, we couldn't go black. And the lady who, Dawn, who she's like an author coach, and she was helping me with what to do with the cover of the book. And she could tell that I wanted like a darker color with the spotlight. And then this is just pretty much what came about from the various conversations. So that's how the book cover came about overall.
This is really cool. I really like that. Andrea, you're located in Canada. Can you help people in the United States? Can you guide them as to where to go?
Yeah, so definitely. So first off, the book is on Amazon on all platforms. So anyone can purchase the book, and it's called Final Departure. And we are building out the services that I will be helping people with. So obviously I have partnerships with various funeral homes in Canada, but as we build it out, I'll be getting more. But at the end of the day, as long as people read the book, fill out the workbooks, and, they would then be able to, like, for instance, when it talks about choosing your funeral home, mind it that you start asking family members what funeral homes have they used, or, a community leader, what funeral homes do people typically use in that community, or even a church, right? So it's a guide to help you to get things going. So one of the services that I do offer is an accountability partner, and that, or accountability coach pretty much, where I'll walk with you at things to do, and then you'll have your homework to do your research, because obviously I don't know everywhere, but at least when you read the book, you'll understand what you need, and you can start asking questions to get what you need.
Your book, Andrea, is desperately, and I do mean, desperately needed. People need to have this book to start asking themselves questions, to start asking their loved one questions. This is important. Does your loved one want to go to donate their body to a medical school? If that's the case, I was going to donate Matt's body. You need, here in New Jersey anyway, I live in New Jersey, you have to pre-register because they may not need bodies at that time. And the body has to be in good condition. So if they don't accept the body, what's your backup? What are you going to do? That was your plan. Very important about organ donation. Do you know if your loved one wants to donate their organs? And if they die at home, is that still, they're not getting the oxygen? So they may not be able to donate.
Exactly. And that's the thing about this topic, is that there's a lot of information out there that's not accurate, right? And it's not until someone passes away, some of us don't have the right information. But if we could start doing research in advance, and some people will say, well, if I start doing this, I'm going to die. No, it's an act of love, starting to put something in place. And, and I always tell people, there's 3 times to talk about this subject on a normal day, where you can laugh, plan something, or in a crisis mode where someone, say, is terminally ill. And that's a difficult time to have those conversations, because with the person who's passing away, they are trying to accept that they are going, right? So then for them to try to be strong for everybody else, or whatever case may be, they don't want to have that conversation then, right? And sometimes, like I was in a situation 2 weeks ago where, this conversation had to be had with somebody in the hospital. And, of course, some of us are now the bad person because certain things they thought was set up was not set up, and then now it's to ask this person these questions, and it's not a nice situation. Or we have these discussions when someone has passed away. Either or, Betsy, it's a difficult conversation, but it needs to be had. Yes. So we just need to choose our difficult and then just act on it. And it's a whole lot easier to have these conversations on a normal day when it's not crisis mode. You can make the right decisions, and it's on piece of paper, so something happens, it is done, it is there, and it adds to the legacy that we will be leaving behind. And if we can get more families to do this earlier, then we're educating our younger kids. There is a religion called the Baha'i Faith, and from the age of, and I'm forgetting the age, it's either 15 or 16, they start educating young people on the topic of this, and they start setting up their wills so that they understand that on a yearly basis they need to update their wills. Here we go again. There's a chapter in the book about updating our wills, updating those important documents. There's times that let's say we have an insurance policy and someone has passed away, or we have an insurance policy with our work as a benefit and we are divorced, and it's our previous spouse that we didn't change the documents at work, and they are getting that money. Do you know what I mean? So it's the importance of getting that information and updating it between our wills, and it talks about, when to update your will. So as I said, the book has so much in it, and the more that we can educate people and get this out, the more that we know, the more we could start asking our loved ones, because it falls on those who are left behind. And I'm going to say it again. If we have siblings, if we have parents, we have aunts and uncles, we have cousins, whoever it is, if a loved one passes away and their affairs are not in order, it falls on those who are left behind. Hence why it's so important that as family and as close friends, and even as enemies, we have these conversations.
Absolutely. I feel, Andrea, that here in the U.S., 18 is legal age. I feel that every 18-year-old should go to a lawyer and have a will drawn up. As you said, you could always update it. You could always change your will. You could always change power of attorney, and have someone to be a power of attorney for medical, financial, and to have a living will, medical directive made up. I took my son 2 years ago, especially with COVID at the height. I got to thinking, what happens, God forbid, if Josh were to get sick? I don't have a say.
Right.
And these are important, extremely important issues. And, I don't know how it is anywhere else. I only know how it is in the United States. But if your child is 18 and older, the hospital doesn't have to tell you anything. If you don't have power of attorney, you're not going to be told exactly what's going on. And I can tell you from other stories I've heard from people, you need to have a will of what goes to who, even make out a list, have them pick out jewelry, whatever possessions you want your loved ones to have it in writing so they are not fighting and bickering over it. It seems when someone dies, the vultures come out, literally.
Yeah.
And, it gets ugly of who's supposed to get what this person wanted, who they wanted to give it to. Get it done so this doesn't happen. So these horrible situations don't have to happen. That's the thing, Andrea. They don't have to happen if people pre-planned.
That's true. 100% accurate. And I just want to I'm just going to back up just a little bit just so that people understand when we talk about living wills. I'm going to put it out there. I'm not a lawyer, everybody. But just so that we understand that the wills, that's in when we pass away, and it's our voice as to what we want done with our estate or what to do with our stuff. And even if we have, oh my goodness, I'm going to back up even more. The reason why I saw this as such, even when I got into the career that I'm in right now, I was first working with a unionized company, and I used to go visit union members' homes, and I would explain to them it was a permanent benefit of a funeral coverage. And one of the questions we would ask is if they have wills. And in most cases when I went to homes, people would say, no, they don't have a will, they don't have a will, they don't have a will. And I thought to myself, whoa, there's a problem here. And I remember I went to this one gentleman's home, and pretty much he told me that he didn't need a funeral package because he's not going to die. That was the first, oh, my goodness. And then I went to this couple's home. They were young, and I asked, do you guys have your will? And they said, yes, we do. And I was so shocked because in most cases I hear that people don't have a will. And this couple said that they have a will because they had a close family friend who died from domestic violence. And when they went to her funeral, the children were in social services. For those of us who have young children, if something happens to us, what do you want, or who do you want to be responsible for your children? There are so many situations where a will was not set up. The father was not in the child's life for whatever reason it may be. And then, obviously, because of that, the father in some cases has more right than our family who the children raised up with. And this is why it's so important that we have these legal documents in place. So that's for the will. When it comes to the living documents, they are if we lose mental capacity. We can lose mental capacity, whether it is from an illness, whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, or if we get into an accident. And the living documents, which is called living wills, there's two different documents. It depends where we live. This is the interesting part about me writing the book is that I had to be careful what I said because not everywhere has the same names, right? So here in Canada, I'm going to say Alberta because it depends where you are in Canada. In Alberta, we have enduring power of attorney personal directive. One is assigning someone to take care of your finances, and another one is assigning someone to take care of your living, things to do with you, your living accommodations. When it comes to your health, things like that. Now, here in Alberta, if these documents are not set up before one loses mental capacity, it is thousands of dollars plus a long process for a loved one to be able to get assigned by the courts to do that. Once again, here, say, for instance, someone loses mental capacity because of an illness or, let's say, an accident. So they lose mental capacity for a certain amount of time. We can't just go into that person's account and pay their bills. So there's times that literally people's lives fall apart, and they may lose homes because someone was not assigned to take care of those financial responsibilities while they lost mental capacity. And that's why it's so important that, when we're in Rome, we do what the Romans do. Some will say, well, we don't need a will back home, and back home might be, somewhere in the Caribbean, in Africa, in Europe, whatever the case may be. But wherever you are, it's to understand how these work. Even when it comes to when we move in with somebody, oh, my goodness, we're going to go too deep here, Betsy. Let's just encourage people, please purchase the book. There is so much information there to learn. And from there, we can work with you to just put a plan in place for peace of mind tomorrow for your loved ones so that the legacy that you want will be there and that could go on for years and years to come. So our legacy is about life and living it to the fullest, right? So it's about learning from the past, living in the present, and building for the future. So let's just pre-plan today for peace of mind tomorrow for our loved ones.
That's beautiful. And Andrea, you brought up a very important topic, and that is, I guess I didn't think about it because my son is an adult, but if you have young children, who do you want them to be with?
Right.
Who's going to raise your children if both you and your partner, you and your spouse, God forbid, got killed together?
Yeah.
Very, very, very important. And I tell people this all the time, you don't want to have to get to picking a court-appointed guardian. You do not want to get here in America. You don't want to get the state involved. You want to be in control. You have to have this in place. And especially like older generations, I know when my dad was diagnosed with dementia, I told my mother immediately, go to a lawyer. Start protecting your assets. Get power of attorney. And, she's of that generation. I can't do that. I'm going to take away his power. He will be mad. I said, no, you're not taking anything away by getting power of attorney. I equate it to money in the bank. It's there when you need it. And then you don't have to go running around like a crazy person. You have it. When Matt was diagnosed, I immediately went to the lawyer and had power of attorneys for medical and financial, a living will done, and I explained to Matt, I'm not taking anything away from you. You are going to make decisions. This is for when you can no longer make decisions. I have to know what you want. I don't want to make that decision about a feeding tube. I don't want to have to make that decision. And really, we shouldn't put this burden on other people. Say what you want. Let's have these conversations. They may not be pleasant, but it needs to be done. And, I think, too, Andrea, is what kind of service do you want? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want at your service? Do you want, what kind of music do you want? Now, I know that Matt loved Johnny Cash, and he said he wanted In the Garden played. So I played Johnny Cash's In the Garden. But what kind of music do you want? This is so important. At my brother's funeral, there was no music, so after everyone left, I played Creedence Clearwater Revival. My brother loved that music, and I played some of the music for him after everyone left.
Right.
What do you, as your legacy, what do you want? And I think we need to have these conversations. Definitely. Excuse me.
And even in the book, there is a chapter on celebration of life. So what do you want for your service? And there's places there that you write down whether it's your favorite songs or what type of music you want, or if there's a hymnal, or if there's a scripture reading, or if there is a favorite quote. If you want a favorite, if you want everyone to wear a certain color, you know what I mean? Like, what do you want? And it's all part of this same book. In fact, there's even a part in the book where you can write a letter to your loved one that your loved one would be able to read when you're no longer around. And what an amazing legacy that would leave for loved ones when they see that you've written down a letter for them that they will have during their grief journey, and a great way for them to remember you as well. Because you know what? When there's times that when someone passes away, the family's looking for, like the loved one is looking for something to hold on to, something to listen to, even like doing a video earlier on, even a video that maybe that could even be played at your celebration of life service, or even, writing a song and singing a song and having it done at your celebration of life. Like, there's just so much, like, it's almost like, if we think about it, we have weddings. It takes 3 months. It takes 6 months. It takes 9 months to plan these weddings, right? So why can't we put that same amount of work into our celebration of life as well? We want to plan all these things, but yet when it comes to celebration of life, it's left to our loved ones to figure it out when they're not in the right mind to. And then there's times that there's nothing that's done because mentally and especially, it's so difficult. Say, for instance, like when I even think about your situation, Betsy, with your husband, he was sick, and, going to the hospital, like mentally, physically, having a loved one in a hospital or in a hospice, or it's a lot of work, and it's emotionally and physically draining. And then after that, to plan and put together a funeral, or to put together a celebration of life or a memorial service, it's a lot. So, you saw it coming, and you went and you got it done. And this is the thing again, is that there's times, and I can understand why you felt guilty, because that was done, when he was sick, right? So that totally makes sense, because it's almost like you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of, making this happen faster almost, right? And that's such a normal feeling to feel in that type of a situation, to protect yourself so that when that time comes, you've made these decisions, so it's less work on you during that devastating time, right? So that was the best thing that she could have done. So
yes,
definitely,
and I'll tell you, it was, or I know in my situation, I won't speak for everybody, I took care of Matt for 10 years in his hospice. When he died, I was so exhausted, I don't even know how I stood up. I'm so glad that I did the pre-planning. I am so glad that I had it planned, Andrea, that when Matt died at the hospice, they called the funeral home, done. I didn't have to, just was the date because Matt died on New Year's Day, so that was a holiday. And, just the date I had to, was up to the cemetery, when they could schedule to have the service. But it was done. We really do need to do this, and I'm glad that I did this. And for those of you who live in the United States, when you have a loved one go into a nursing home, they want this done. I could tell you that from my father when he was in a nursing home, my mother-in-law, and they were on Medicaid. They want you to have this done. And, even like power of attorney, I don't know how it is in other countries. I can only talk about the United States. Folks, when you apply for Medicare for your loved one, or you want to change anything with Medicare for your loved one, guess what? They're going to ask you for a power of attorney, and they're going to ask you for those papers. You call up about your spouse's life insurance, pension papers, they ask for power of attorney. I know because I had to deal with it firsthand. So you need that power of attorney. It is imperative, and I can't say it enough. I know I sound redundant, but it is so vitally important. And I can't thank you enough, Andrea, for coming on Chatting with Betsy and for writing this book. Really, it's a book that everybody should have, and it is available on Amazon.com. Andrea, tell people where they can reach you. It's www.preplanfirst.com. They could get a hold of you there.
And then they can go to the website. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, Andrea Cox. And
the name of your book, Final Departure, a step-by-step guide to prepare for one's passing. Folks, after you hear this podcast, I'm telling you, run to your computer, your tablet, your smartphone, or go to your bookstore and have it ordered. You need to get this book, and it's very informative, very helpful, and I hope everyone buys it. I really do, because it's a book that should be in everyone's library. And I really think, Andrea, I think all clergy people should have this book in their library. Yeah. I'm going to go as far as to say that's how strongly I feel about your book. It should be. Every clergy person, I don't care what you believe in, where you go, it should be part of someone's library to help somebody out. That's how strong I believe in your book. And I want to thank you.
You just gave me a very good idea there, so I thank you for that, Jill.
You're welcome.
Or Betsy, sorry, Betsy.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go to the clergy people and show them your book. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's now that I think about it, it's not even talked about in places of worship. Like planning. Yes, planning for your soul. Yes, that is discussed. But planning, like the legal matters and all, that's not discussed. And it needs to be. It really does. I mean, is it pleasant to talk about, folks? No. but is it necessary? Oh, yes, very, very necessary. And I just love people like you, Andrea, who are helping people. You wrote a book that I can't brag enough about it because it's so very important to have this information and to know where to go, what to do. People are lost. They don't know what to do or where to go. This book will help them. And I really very much appreciate the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Betsy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And please, feel free to come back whenever you like. There's always something to discuss.
There is. We could go deeper with the different chapters.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it can't be said enough, for sure. I mean, I hear situations all the time. I should have gotten a will. I should have done this. I should have done that. And, you know, I'd like to say, why didn't you listen to my show when I had this on? Right. So really, folks, you need to be prepared. It's so important. Very, very important. And it helps the family. It's really a gift you're giving to your family by being prepared. So there's no fighting. There's no bickering. It's all there and legalized. If that's the word. It's legal. Right. And so I thank you again, Andrea Cox, for coming on. My new friends from Canada, thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Betsy. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
You're welcome, and best wishes and much success on your book. And let me know. I'm sure it's going to become a bestseller. I believe that. I could see it. So let me know when that happens.
I shall.
You're welcome. Well, I'll tell you what, not that I had anything to do with it, but many people who've been on my podcast have had bestsellers. They have become bestsellers, so I believe you will also become a bestseller. You know, they go on all these different, you know, what you call media tours. And that's how you get a bestseller. You get it out there. So thank you, Andrea. And I'm going to, this will be out there. So thank you so much. Folks, thank you for listening. Share the show to help someone else. This is what Chatting with Betsy is about. It's about helping people. It's about giving you resources. And so you don't make the same mistakes that I made in some cases, and so that you are prepared. It's my way of paying it forward. And if you missed any of this podcast, you could catch it again wherever you hear your favorite podcast. I recommend subscribing to Chatting with Betsy, wherever you hear podcasts. It is free to subscribe to, because I have many phenomenal guests on my show on many different topics. And I think you're going to want to listen to them. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who's station manager, Passion World Talk Radio, for producing the show, writing the blog. The information will be in the blog about Andrea Cox and her book, where you can reach her, so please read the blog. And thank you to Lillian Caldwell, the CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible by giving us a voice and making sure that we have a voice and making sure it's heard, giving us an opportunity to be heard. And I can't thank Lillian enough. So I want to thank everybody. And in a world where you could be anything, folks, please be kind. Shine your light bright, because we need it. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, Station Manager at PHECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon ALEXA, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.